Welcome to Talk Tantra to me. It is such an honor to be holding space for this divine knowledge to make its way into your ears and lifestyle. Today, I talk Tantra with Rohini Elyse. She is a Reiki and sound practitioner. I'm so grateful for her content and so appreciative that she's here on the podcast to offer her perspective of living an expansive life. So thank you for being here, Rohini. Why don't you start by telling us a bit about your journey with becoming a Reiki and sound practitioner? How did you discover this passion and purpose?
Thank you so much for having me. It feels really good. Yeah, thank you for that question. Well, Reiki specifically is really woven into my path. And I had the gift of having a mom who also was attuned to Reiki. So growing up, if I had like a stomach ache or headache or something, she would offer me her hands and say something about Reiki, which I didn't really understand, when I was like 5 years old. All I knew was that her hands got really hot and my stomach ache or headache felt better, usually afterwards. And looking back at that now, just early seedings of so much to come with Reiki. And I've always been very drawn uh, to having a spiritual practice that's rooted in expression, especially with sound. I grew up, my parents practice a form of Hinduism. So I grew up always chanting mantra, Sanskrit mantra. And that felt, now looking back, I'm like, wow, what a gift to me to have that like frequency always around. Super, super cool. Um, so I guess my life path has been woven with this. But Reiki is really like my soul mission, soul's purpose. And just to share about Reiki for those who may not know what it means. Reiki translates to spiritual energy. So Rei means spiritual or true or soul, and Ki means energy. So it's everything, everywhere, infinity. Very broad path.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing, your roots with it. I feel that it's really unique to grow up having that sort of awareness in today's day and age. I know that I
Mhm.
certainly didn't. And I feel like so many listeners probably didn't as well, but that's incredible that it was always a part of your practice. Was there
Mhm.
ever a time that you felt like doubt around energy work or like noticed that like you know, your experience growing up or your experience with your parents and their view of energy was like different from those around you? Was there any of that?
Oh yes, absolutely. I started giggling because like middle school, um, there are all these people chanting in my bedroom on Wednesdays. Like, I just want to go to the volleyball game like everyone else. Like, why don't we celebrate? Like, why don't we go to church on Easter? All that kind of thing. I grew up in a small town and feeling just slightly different from the norm was so hard for me that I like turned away all the practices. Like we would always say a little prayer at dinner. And for all of middle school and some of high school, I just like stayed silent and stared like at the wall while they said their prayer, which is so interesting. I have a lot of compassion for myself then because I just wanted to fit in.
Yeah.
But also it's such a beautiful invitation that's always around to have a deeper practice. So I definitely turned away from it for a while.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. Thank you for your vulnerability in speaking into that as well. And where does this bring you now? Like how do you bring this magic into the world? Like how did you evolve into, bringing this magic to the world almost like professionally and also just like
Mhm.
so holistically online, etc.?
Beautiful question. So fun to think about too, like how it all works, how the path weaves. Um, I actually, with my Reiki, like wanting to become certified and really learn more about it, my hands just started kind of like heating one day. I was going to different like retreats and things and just feeling a lot of expansion, reading a lot of books about spirituality. I was starting to meditate more like on my own. And I guess when I say on my own, I mean like self-directed versus like family. um, and my hands just started kind of, I had more awareness of my hands. Let's just put it that way. They started kind of like tingling and warmth. And whenever I would sit down to meditate, I just started noticing my hands a lot. And I was like, huh, that's kind of interesting. I feel like there's something there. And I think, I don't know if it was probably a couple of months later, this had continued to happen. And I was listening to a podcast and I heard about my teacher now, Laura Elliott. I heard about her on a podcast, and it was just one of those moments like that feels really good. That name just sparked some like I want to go, I want to go. And then a couple hours later, I was signed up for her training, and it was just saying yes to that brought so much change into my life. And pretty much the moment that I walked into the training, I just was like, yes, this is going to be very important to me. I can feel that. And it was, and it has been. And now, like, I was pretty recently attuned as a Reiki master, which is the third level of the trainings. And whew, yeah, it's it's so special to me. It's so much more than offering like a hands-on healing session. It's like really a spiritual path for me. So it's an honor to like be offering that and also be such a student at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. I love seeing people just in their dharma and like lit up by
Mhm.
it and just so fearlessly going for it. It's incredible and so beautiful. And I just have to say thank you so much for following that like
Aw.
because it is, I think that a lot of
Thank
people
you.
have those moments of like, ooh, like I'm feeling like maybe there's an opportunity for me here, but there's a little bit of like shyness or resistance
Mhm.
towards it because especially things that are outside of, like the mainstream, right? So
Mhm.
that's really amazing. Thank you for that. Do you have any
Yeah.
words of like wisdom or like how do you feel into like whether something is for you? Like how do you work with the energy in that way to like guide your life?
Wow, beautiful question. It's funny when you were just sharing that, I was thinking like when I first started gravitating towards Reiki, I still had my foot pretty heavily, I guess you could say. That's what the energy felt like, very heavy. In the like social media content creation world. It's what I did for like 4 years as my main career path. And so starting to even consider that a spiritual practice and path could also be my job was like, no, 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 this is too good to be true. Um, but to answer your question about energy, like talk about flow. When I started listening to the call of Reiki and also offering sound healing sessions and just offering, like putting offerings in that are from a very like service oriented, heart oriented place, it just flowed. Like people were signing up, people are asking me about it. I'm feeling energized when I wake up. I'm feeling energized like before I sleep. I just have like all this creative energy flowing through me. And in comparison, like not in alignment with some old things I was doing for work and like having sponsorships that weren't in alignment or whatever it was. Like the energy is just very stagnant, very like flat, more of like having to push or pull versus like being low. So I love that I have that comparison now.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely resonate with the feeling of like, do what you love and the rest will follow. I look at what I do now and it's like, doesn't feel like work and I love it. And I didn't know that that was possible. I thought that work had to feel like labor and
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't have to be like that. And in fact, the more you lean into the things you love, the more, from my experience and from what I've seen, and it sounds like you, the more you lean into what you love and follow that flow, the greater abundance and the greater impact is on the other side. So yeah, thank you. And you mentioned,
Absolutely.
I also loved your perspective in that you mentioned that you were still this like student, like being a student of Reiki. And I also feel that so deeply while I I feel that others perceive me as being like a bit of an authority in this space. Um, it's one of those things that like keep there continues to be deeper initiations into the space, and it's a constant unveiling. And I love that you call yourself a student of the earth. That's like on your Instagram or something. And
Mm.
I'd love for you to speak into like, what does that mean?
Mm. Yes. Instagram bios, sometimes I have such a hard time with it. I'm like, how do I sum up my whole existence in a few words on Instagram?
Yeah.
So I'm happy that you noticed that and resonated with it. But being a student of the earth, to me, I think the biggest thing for me is that it reminds me of coming into a place of gratitude. Like really feeling honored that I get to be here and I have my feet on this earth in this body at this time, like just reminding myself that this is not forever, and to really like savor it while I have it, but also just that the earth, Mama Earth, she's feminine, she's effortlessly giving, nurturing, abundant. And when I really slow down and listen to her, it also brings me into listening to the abundant, overflowing, nurturing mother within myself. Just that like mirror effect. If I'm going through a process and then I look outside and it's raining, it's just this beautiful mirror, like, okay, I'm a student of everything that's around me, and I want to be reminded of that every single day. Yeah.
Yeah, what a grounded perspective in just coming home to the idea that we're like a soul having a human experience and we came here for a
Mhm.
reason. Right.
Mhm.
So I adore that. And I'm sure that that is one way that you approach your Reiki. And I'd love if we could talk a little bit more. I know you kind of explained like etymologically what Reiki means, but I'd love if we could talk a little bit more about what is Reiki, like how can listeners benefit from it, and like what can one expect in a session?
Yay. I love sharing this. Thank you. So I think what people traditionally, for those who even have heard of Reiki, but for traditionally, I feel like people think Reiki is a hands-on healing session, which is definitely a part of Reiki. Like if you were to, find your local wellness center, they might have Reiki on the menu that you can go in for like a Reiki session. And that is one part of Reiki, which is Tenohita, which is palm healing. And it's such a powerful part for great reason. Um, and as a practitioner, it's in order, at least in my opinion, and what I've learned from my teacher, in order to really be able to offer nourishing, like expansive healing sessions, the practitioner also um, has an opportunity, an invitation to go really deep with their practice with Reiki, which means there's breathing exercises, there's meditation exercises, there's precepts to chant in the morning and during the day. There's all of the studies and symbols and mantras to bring you into this awareness where you can begin to be open space to allow this Reiki, this spiritual energy to flow through during a healing session for someone. So that was a lot all at once, but it's like, it's very simple, but it's so profound. Um, and everyone can benefit from Reiki because everyone is Reiki. We're all beings with soul energy, with spiritual energy. And simply going and breathing and having your hands on your belly and just focusing on your breath, like that can be a Reiki practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had a few in my life, and it definitely can be a really powerful experience. Some people kind of feel like they have to be sensitive to energy to like get the benefits or to even want to do it. And I feel
Mm,
like I am very sensitive and I can always feel things when I go into these sessions. I'm curious what you would say to people that are like, oh, I'm just not that sensitive to energy, or like, I don't think it's going to work on me because,
mm,
I'm more of like a hands-on person or whatever.
yeah, such a great question. Um, Everyone can benefit from Reiki, absolutely. And there's no prerequisites. Like the only thing I say is that ideally you'll have an open heart when you come into the session, just like open to not knowing necessarily what's going to happen, not attaching to any type of outcome. But people have all kinds of different reactions. Sometimes people, or experiences, I should say. Sometimes people fall asleep. Sometimes people see, a bunch of visions and like connect with their ancestors. Sometimes people have big emotional releases or like shaking or getting hot or cold. But most commonly, people leave feeling very relaxed and very peaceful, and like they just took a really nourishing deep nap or deep meditation. And there is no level of like you don't have to be doing yoga and seeing auras and things to be able to receive
Yeah.
a palm healing session. It's just, I guess, being able to surrender and trust enough to like be open in that space, for whatever is meant to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've heard and read of so many miracles that happen even to people that are like deeply like hesitant or even mistrustful of the energy. Do you have any experience with that or anything you want to speak into on like just insane shifts happening for people?
Yeah, what I love so much is Reiki is it's like magic. It's magic. I mean, when I think about the books that I read when I was younger, like all these mystical, magical things happening, when I'm offering a session, I'm like, I am in this book. Like this, this is such a wonder. It's such a miracle, that I get to be here witnessing this and being in this. And I also think like, I don't know, sometimes we humans like to attach to the outcome. That's something I'm really like working on myself, is just that surrendering, that trusting, that opening. And um, just knowing that you're in the right place in the right time, and whatever's meant to happen will happen. I think that's the only thing I can say. But sometimes, yeah, people just have huge expansion.
Beautiful. Yeah, thank you for speaking into that idea of like trusting and flowing with it. You know, and you're absolutely right that so many of us like resist that if there's not like the concrete evidence. But it's important to recognize that like so much of our human experience is unable to be, explained by science, and at the same time there's more and more science coming out. But to me, I always reflect on the idea that like everything that is truth now used to be a conspiracy theory, or it used to be
Mm,
a hypothesis.
mhm,
Like the earth used to be the center of the universe until someone proved it. And it is cool that now in this day and age we are getting more and more evidence and science about how energy works and how it can heal us. Just for the listeners, you would probably be better offering some of these resources, but for me, Joe Dispenza's Becoming Supernatural is a great one. There's another one called
mm.
Energy Medicine. It's a little bit more didactic, but yeah. Do you want to speak into any of that, like the science and like how like Reiki actually works, like in terms of like energy flowing?
Well, honestly, my lineage that I've learned under, and I do want to do more, perhaps diving into more of the science of, but it's really like a lot of it's based on Buddhist principles. So it's pretty much every question you ask, you get asked a question back. Like that's like the practice is like, you ask like, well, what does this mean? What is it doing? And then, well, what do you feel like it means? What do you feel like it's doing? Really like empowering you to just tune in to the energy that's flowing through at all times. And my Aquarius nature really loves that. And we want to learn more of the science as well. But I mean, we know and we feel that we are energetic beings. And although the chakra system is not actually part of the traditional Japanese Reiki system, it's more of, an Indian belief or practice. There is a lot, there's the heart chakra, there's the throat chakra, and each one has different energies connected to it. So if I'm having my hands over some throat and it's getting really warm, feels like a lot of energies moving through, and then after they share, oh, they had a lot of problems speaking my truth. And this, goes back because my mom had problems speaking her truth, and my grandmother. And there's so much that is going on, just from feeling a little bit of heat and energy and awareness in a space, that we don't necessarily see. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for speaking into that. So to me, it's just like in a base level one sentence, and this works for Reiki and everything else in life. Energy goes where, wait, yeah, energy goes where attention energy flows where attention goes. There it is. Energy flows where attention goes. Got it.
Energy flows,
um,
attention goes. Yes.
and yeah, and that's like that it's proven by science as well as trust, just seeing
Mm-hmm.
we all have evidence of that in our lives. So beautiful. And what or how can Reiki support individuals who are looking for greater intimacy or sensuality or depth in relationship to self or sex? Just curious, since this is a Tantra podcast, to speak into
Mm-hmm.
some of those topics.
Absolutely. I love bringing this element into it. I mean, I think what I'm really feeling in my heart for this question is like Reiki, at the very, very least, I believe can help and support someone in feeling safe
Mm-hmm.
and feeling peace and comfort in their body and in their presence. Like, the reflection I get most often after a session is, wow, I haven't felt that peaceful or relaxed or safe in like a long time.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about sex and intimacy, like feeling safe in your body is, such a huge, huge portal to so
Yeah.
much possibility and pleasure. So yeah, and opening your heart to Reiki, very, very heart opening. So that combination, I think, especially my own experience. I mean, along my Reiki path, my capacity for so much incredible, sex and pleasure and like otherworldly connection during sex with my partner. I know that it's correlated to my Reiki practice as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking from my own experience, like pleasure can be so much more nuanced than we make it out to be. And when you are stepping into a container where you are just focusing on like energy moving, it like allows
Mm,
you to start to realize like how the energy moves sexually as well. So like in a Reiki session, I could be more aware
absolutely.
how the energy was moving throughout my body based on what the practitioner was doing, which also made me more sensitive to those micro like movements of energy within like a pleasure session, which is
Mhm.
super powerful. And like I think that so many of us just explore sex in like a very physical way, but that's like so limited. Like there's so much more, and to me Reiki is such like a gateway into like understanding like the expansion available as well.
Mm, absolutely. So, so beautifully said. Like, I mean, and just the subtle things too, like, and what would happen if while you're having sex with your partner, you put each other's hands on the back of your heart and just like tune into that energy. Like that's Reiki. That's practicing Reiki. And that can expand so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And I'd love to branch into talking a little bit about self love, because I also feel like that's a really big theme of your work.
Mhm.
So, what are some misconceptions around like self love and what it means to love oneself, and how do you like take on that practice?
Thank you. Um, Yeah, this is definitely, I mean, self-love, I think, is a huge theme for so many of us. But for me, especially with having my work be very facing and very like open, I didn't have boundaries, I don't think, when I was online a lot. So my self-worth and self-love was very much correlated with how my subscribers saw me, like, did my video too good? Were they commenting? What were they saying? Like, it was very much outside of me. And I used to approach self-love as a more like go, 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 do, like push and pull. Like, if I don't like how I look in this photo, then I'll just like reframe. I'll just say positive affirmations at myself until I feel differently, or I'll just do more yoga, or I'll just do more face masks, or whatever it is. Um, more, and kind of trying to force something. Which, in our society, there is that, it's very prevalent, the more. And now, as I'm going on my path and deepening my studies in life and in myself, self-love has really become the very opposite of that. It's become just sitting, a lot of sitting and meditating and breathing, and just like allowing and opening and softening, like the opposite. I guess you could say go, 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 more would be more like wounded masculine
Yeah.
energetics. But now it's very much like just feminine, open, receiving, and non-judgmental. One of the Reiki precepts is, just for today, I'm compassionate with myself and others. So when I'm meditating and I have, some thought or something that's down on myself, then I can have that Reiki concept come in, like, just for today, I'm compassionate with myself, and just seeing that voice and that part of me, and just loving it and accepting it. It's
Yeah,
hard. It's hard though. It's so hard.
it is. I feel like grace for oneself is one of the most divine forms of love in this world. And
Mm-hmm.
I definitely super resonate with the more mentality. And it's so ironic when we're talking about something like self-love and self-care. There was a moment in the spring where I was going through a lot, and so I had enlisted a lot of professional help to like support me, and that included like massage therapy and womb healing and acupuncture and going to the infrared and then doing yoga. And I was like, I need to do all the things to like
Mm-hmm.
work through what's happening in my body and whatever energy is associated with that. And there was one point that I was like rushing out the door to go to like the center where I would do infrared and some of these other practices. And I realized that I was actually creating more stress and doing the
Mm-hmm.
opposite of self-love by like feeling like I needed to do all these things and rush around to make it happen. Whereas like what I actually needed in that moment was to just sit the fuck down
Yes,
and not
absolutely.
self-love myself in the way, or do the self-care that was like a doingness, or like that I felt like I
Mm.
needed to do to feel like I was doing it right, when in reality I just needed to tune in with myself and get clear on like, what do I need today, like what is the
Yeah.
medicine of this moment. And actually maybe it's stillness, maybe it's not, you know doing another thing that would be perceived as self-care but would actually just be too much for me today.
I love that so much. I wholeheartedly agree. And like, that is another reason too, the student of the earth thing, like the earth is always going through her cycles and her seasons, as is the moon. Like, why would I be any different? Sometimes I want to rest, and that's what's nourishing. Sometimes I want to create. And yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely working with the seasons has been such a big part of my practice, and something that we could have a completely, different conversation about. But I mean, just giving people that permission to really feel into like, what is the time of year and what lessons does it have for me in this moment? And we don't need to go into that too deep. But if you feel inspired, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, right now when we're recording this, it's winter, and I am so loving just really tuning into this season and what that means, and like zooming back and noticing too, my friends are all kind of cocooning. I'm seeing people a little bit less. Like, I'm wanting to sleep in a little more, and maybe cook some soups, and like read, and just really slow down. And in the past, maybe I would have tried to force myself with more coffee, or, you know, like you were saying, more self care to like push myself into being productive. But just slowing down and like having the soup and wearing the sweater and sleeping in a little is so, so nourishing. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Same over here, leaning way more into my domestic loving
Hmm.
duties, as well as visioning. To me, like, winter is so representative of like the darkness of the womb and like
Yes.
moon, and it's like, okay, like I'm going to take the spaciousness that I'm naturally feeling like I need in my own space to vision about the next year, the next creation, and getting curious about that.
Yes, I'm in that with you too. So many beautiful creations are coming.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so rare. Like, so many of us just keep on doing the same thing and keep going because like we have this hustle mentality and we have this feeling that we have to keep producing to survive and to also be like worthy of love. And so to take some time off and just like replenish and also consider like, is this working for me? Or
Mhm.
are there some shifts that I could make that would feel really good for me this year? Whether it is creating something new or restructuring what you're already doing is just so powerful, and definitely giving the listeners permission to be that student of the earth for sure.
Mm, yes, full permission slip. I
Yeah,
love.
love it. So on that topic of self-love, how can self-love change your relationship to intimacy, sensuality, and sex? Kind of similar to our question with Reiki, but just flipping it a little bit.
Yes, this is like the eternal, the eternal question. Um, so great to contemplate. I mean, I think again, kind of with the nature references and like the element references, when I have my self-love practice, which, looks different every day, but a lot of just listening, time of listening and coming into a space where I feel safe and held by myself in my body. In those moments afterwards, I feel so magnetic. I feel so abundant. Like I just imagine that I'm this like well running this really abundant, like natural, um, natural abundance. Like it's not like that classic saying, you can't
Yeah,
pour from an empty cup. But with this self-love practice, I'm just already, I'm exuding, I'm flowing. It's just it's magnetic. And noticing how my partner and I come together. For instance, he was just at a retreat for like 4 days, and I was facilitating at a retreat. It just happened to be at the same time. And we were both like so much, on our path and our dharma, nourishing our souls, and then coming back together. It's like, like just so
yeah,
much passion and so much, yeah, beautiful connection. So I think for me, it really, everything starts with that self-love, everything.
yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. I think that our self-love is our training ground for loving the other. When you are able to really love yourself, then you're able to love another better, and you're also able to receive love so much more
Yeah,
deeply. So,
absolutely. Yeah.
thank you. So I feel really good about our conversation and where we've gone in
Mm.
the last half hour or so. I'd love to start kind of wrapping up, but I'm curious if there's anything else that you want to add or speak into before I kind of wrap up with the last couple questions.
Mm. I think something that popped in my mind when we were speaking before about like what could someone expect in a Reiki session, and just to really kind of bring this home, like without, the expectation of needing to be like super psychically tapped in or energetically sensitive, or and if that is the case, then that's wonderful. But that the importance and like validity of having a space where you're being cared for, in a safe, like just truly loving container is so, so valuable. And again, that reflection of like, I feel so peaceful, I feel so safe,
Yeah,
I feel so calm, or that they just got to rest for an hour on the table when they don't sleep very well, like
yeah,
those moments can be so valuable. And I think Reiki is a wonderful opportunity and permission slip to be held. Like how often do we let ourselves be really held?
yeah,
And yeah, so wanted to offer that.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I think that that is just invaluable as well.
Mhm.
So I have a bonus question for you. I ask
Mm.
all my guests, what awakens your arrows? What turns you on? What makes you feel erotically alive?
I love this. Words. I love I love writing. I love poetry. I love reading. Like if I'm reading a good book, I'm turned on, even if it's not like a sexual book. I love having my brain and imagination stimulated in that way, like so much. I love cooking. That also turns on, gets me very just that creative kind of hands in something energy is really juicy for me. Um and again, I mean, no surprise because I've talked a lot about energy, but with my partner, just like breathing, having our heads together and just breathing and just opening to each other's energy first before any, perhaps like physical intimacy after that. But really, the energetic connection is huge for me. No
Yeah,
surprise there.
absolutely. I'm feeling a lot of like intention and presence in those qualities or those like sort of activities, which I love. I'm fully enrolled in that, and it's so very
Mm,
tantric. So beautiful.
yes.
And where can listeners find you and or support you?
Mm, yes. My Instagram is probably where I'm most active, which is at Rohini Elyse. And also have a new website that I've been working on, also rohinielyse.com, and that's where you can find all my Reiki updates and offerings. And I do have a podcast. I'm not active with it at the moment, but I will be in the new year, and that's called Light Legacy. And there's a lot of good, juicy, just kind of brain and heart channeling sessions there. So
Love
yeah.
it. Heart channeling sessions. I'm here for it. Beautiful. Well, great opportunities for the listeners. Those will be linked in the bio. And just want to
Mm,
say thank you again, Rohini, for joining me today. And I also
thank you
want to
so
express my,
much.
you're welcome. I also want to express my gratitude to the listener. Thank you once more for opening yourself up to the idea of sacred sexuality. With so much gratitude and love, have a sexy and spiritual day. And I'll catch you next week on Talk Tantra to Me. Ta ta.